I'll tell you what, man. I don't really know what's going on this week, but this is like pasta fazool heaven. And I don't know. I had Angelo Cataldi on early in the week, and I had Missinelli on. I just had Farset on. I mean, if you're a Paisan and you want to talk some sports, man, you got to go to Philly. There's only one place that they accept Italians. And because of the absolute godfather of Italians and a guy who I admire, one of my dear friends, Tony Bruno, joins us here, one of the legendary voices in Philly. How are you, brother?
I'm good, Dan. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, got you good.
Okay. All right, good. Because I don't. It's funny, I don't hear myself, so I'm not talking too loud, right? Is it quality? Is it long? All right, beautiful. Well, no, it's great to be back. It's been a crazy summer, but I'm not in Philly anymore. I'm in Southwest Florida, as you know. 1 year ago, when the hurricane hit, we moved down here, and so now we're getting ready for the 1 year anniversary of the hurricane last year. So Miss Robin and I are enjoying the Florida weather. We love it down here, but I'm still locked in. As much as I like your Canes last night, who didn't cover the number against Bethune-Cookman, though, and I think a lot of the gamblers are not happy with that, Dan. How do you explain that?
And, it's an outrage. It's an outrage. It's all I could say to you. It's an outrage. Hey, Tone, how's the health, brother?
It's okay. I mean, I've had some issues, but luckily I'm feeling better now. I lost weight. I'm doing everything I can to get in shape. It's hard when you're 71. You don't feel like working out every morning. But I've been outside, working on my boat, working on a trailer, just, and even in the heat, I've lost like 30 pounds since the beginning of the year. So that's not because I'm sick. That's because I'm outside sweating. And that's what you got to do. You got to get outside. You got to enjoy the fresh air. Even though it's hot and humid down here, people are like, how can you take that humidity in Southwest Florida? I love humidity. I'd rather be doing this than cold. So I grew up in the Northeast. I've lived in cold weather. I've lived in warm weather. I lived in LA. And so I can adapt to whatever, but I love living near the water. And that's what I did when I moved to LA and we were working out there. I wanted to live near the beach. I didn't want to live in the valley. And when I moved to Florida, I wanted to live near the water. I don't want to live in the middle of the state. And when I wanted to go to the middle of the state, go to Disney in Orlando, I drive to it. You know what I
mean? Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Tone, before I start out with this first two games, which have not looked very good for the Eagles here, let me ask you something. Jeffrey Lurie goes into his 30th year this year as the owner of the Eagles since he bought it from Norman Brayman. He's got one Super Bowl championship. You think he's over or underachieved as an owner?
I think he's I don't know if overachieved. I think that there was some times when people were like, "What are you doing?" Remember when we going through the whole Rich Kotite era, and he gave Buddy Ryan a chance, and he also gave Rich Kotite a chance, and then we moved on. And Doug Peterson, people were like, "What are you doing hiring Doug Peterson?" And all Doug Peterson did was take a team to the Super Bowl and win it. Obviously Andy Reid was there forever, and the fans in Philadelphia loved Andy Reid. But Andy Reid, whether it's his fault or Donovan McNabb's or whatever, or the defense, Donovan McNabb was a great quarterback who just couldn't get over the hump. He got into a Super Bowl, their first against the Patriots down in Jacksonville, and they couldn't get it done, and they lost by 3 points. So I think Jeffrey Lurie is one of those owners. He listens to his people. People were wanting to get rid of Howie Roseman just a couple of years ago after they didn't draft Justin Jefferson. And they made some bad draft picks. Especially with receivers. I mean, when they took Nelson Aguilar, actually turned out to be a pretty decent player, and he's still playing in the league. So you go back and watch Aguilar play. Aguilar then fell into disfavor with the fans because he dropped some balls, and a lot of people turned on him. But the one guy that really hurt him, but they were able to get over that, is what's his face, the guy that they drafted instead of Justin Jefferson,
right?
Jalen Reagor. Jalen Reagor was one of the worst draft picks ever. But the good thing about Jeffrey Lurie and this organization, people wanted Howie Roseman go. Remember, he hired Chip Kelly, gave him the whole package, and then Chip Kelly had 1 or 2 good years, and then he basically flamed out. So Jeffrey's not a guy who's going to hire a coach and fire a coach after one good or bad season. But now with Sirianni, at least I'll give him credit for this. He knew he made a mistake after that game up there in New England last week. He said, "You know what? In retrospect, I should have played some of my starters." When you get a new defensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator, and a whole bunch of new players, especially in the defensive secondary, which was decimated last week and was decimated even more against the Vikings. I think these guys look at their mistakes, acknowledge them, and say, all right, what do we have to do to get better? And obviously the Vikings, and Brian Flores saw what happened in New England and did the same thing. Let's send pressure. And it worked. And then the Eagles, I'm screaming at the TV, run the damn ball. And I had no idea. I had no idea that they were going to have a running back go 175 yards in the game. So they're willing to try different things. And I'm screaming at the TV because Jalen Hurts was running for his life. And I'm saying they're going to get him hurt, just like we saw with Aaron Rodgers. The first 4 plays, you could see Aaron Rodgers was pretty good at moving around. He had no chance in that game. And in the 4th play, he gets knocked out for the season. And that's what I was worried about Jalen Hurts, because obviously he was feeling the pressure. But then when they started making adjustments and started running the ball, and both teams were sloppy. I mean, it was a preseason game the way it was played in the first half. But to me, the Eagles running the football helped them. And, they also had help from their defense causing some turnovers. And they also had the biggest help is when Jefferson, put the ball and had to go out of bounds, or else the Eagles could have easily lost that game.
Absolutely. Tone, let me throw this at you here. I mean, Jalen Hurts has really played well for 1 year. And, do you have enough of a sample size to sit there, and especially after the first 2 games, not a lot of things have changed personnel-wise on that side of the ball. I clearly know Brian Johnson and him, there's a disconnect, because to me, it looks like 2021 Jalen Hurts, where it's one read stuff. Guys are streaking across the field on the backside, wide open. You saw A.J. Brown bitching on the sideline about not getting throws to him a little bit. I mean, do you think, again, I don't want, and it's not over, it's just, have you really seen enough of Hurts to go, this kid's an elite player here? Because first 2 games for me, I don't know, man. It just does. It looks like 2021 Hurts.
I disagree, Dan. I mean, obviously, based on the first 2 games, the entire team hasn't looked good. But the thing I really like about Jalen Hurts, he's a stand-up guy. He doesn't make excuses. He doesn't blame anybody else. After the game, I'm watching his interview, and he's saying, A.J. Brown's my best friend. And so he knows that's going to happen. And receivers are divas, and you know that. But the good thing is what he did, and it could have hurt them. After that little thing on the sideline, he was trying to force the ball to A.J. Brown. And he threw a touchdown pass to him that was called back on a holding penalty. And then he tried another ball, which almost connected. So I think him, he wants to, because remember last week, Dallas Goedert didn't get one ball thrown to him. And so when you have an offense that was clicking on all cylinders last year, regardless of who was out there, you start wondering, why is this team all of a sudden inept on offense? But when you look at Hurts and you know that he's still that butt what do they call that thing when they push him from behind now? The
butt
Philly shove. The butt shove, I think it's called.
The butt shove? Oh
yeah, they do that in some neighborhoods too, but that's a different butt shove. We're talking about. I mean, that play, it's unstoppable. They're on the goal line. He's a yard behind the line of scrimmage, and nobody has run. Remember, Tom Brady always would go for it on 4th down, and he'd always get the first down, right? Or he'd score from the 1-yard line. Jalen Hurts has taken it to the next level, and the league wanted to stop that. But, I don't have a problem with it as long as guys aren't pulling him in from the front. And so they'll probably go back and look at it again. But, for all the numbers weren't great and everything else, the guy scored like 3 touchdowns. And I'm not talking for fantasy purposes. I still think Jalen Hurts is a guy, when you look at his face, he doesn't look down when things are going bad, and he doesn't look down or up too high when things are going bad. And he knows it. But they're 2-0. And as ugly as those games are, they got 2 important wins there. And that's what now you have to think about coming to Tampa Bay. And I'm going to hope to go out there for that Monday nighter on the 25th. And we'll get to see the Bucs again this week.
You need tickets?
Yeah, you got
down there? I'll call them up for you.
I need to go. Drive right up there to Tampa.
You and Miss Robin?
Miss Robin and I, we need to go to Raymond James Stadium. Robin and I will even go over to Mons Venus after the game. Win or lose. I don't know
what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. Just make sure you tell Joe Redner Big Sil says hi. Not that I know him.
By the way, I still have my 6-foot ruler from one back in the day. Remember they had a Super Bowl there one year? And then the city government said, We cannot have our girls being touched. So we're going to institute a 6-foot rule. So when you go into the club, legendary club that's known, internationally known, they had this. So WDAE, the station we were both working for, came up with this great idea, handing out 6-foot tape measures with the station's call letters on the side, so that when you went in there, you and Redner, the owner, loved the idea because then everybody could be legal. You open up that tape measure, you were 6 feet away, everything was copacetic, man. That's what I like. I like cooperation between the ladies and the football fans and the sports community. That's what it's all about. It's a brotherhood and sisterhood. We all come together.
My wife took my ruler away from me years ago. Right? I don't know where to go. Listen, Angelo, I want to ask you your opinion on Sirianni. See, he thinks Sirianni's a cheerleader because he said this. He goes, look, last week, the first thing he does, he's always covering for these coaches. He comes out, he says, Brian Johnson called a great game. And the people in fan base in Philadelphia were watching that going, he did not call a great game, but there's Nick falling on the sword for him, and he doesn't think he's a genuine guy. What's your take on Sirianni?
Well, I haven't had any personal contact with him because I've been in Florida the last year and the year before that. I was living in New Jersey, but I haven't had a chance to have any personal conversations or interactions with Sirianni. But I think the players like him, and obviously when you lose both of your coordinators, and you bring in guys that you like, there's always going to be. You remember when Jim Schwartz was a defensive coordinator and people got antsy and what's he doing out there? And then Gannon came in and people were like, what's Gannon doing? What's going on with the defense? So whenever there's a new coach, whether it's an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, the fans are always going to get antsy. Philly fans, New York fans, Boston fans. The most passionate fans, I think, in sports, they're the ones who always get antsy. They booed last night. And you know what? I was booing from home, too. Yeah, I heard them all the way down here in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, for God's sake. And they should have been booed because it wasn't the players. It was the ability to not – and then they finally woke up and said, let's run the ball. And so, to me, when you can make adjustments on the move, they were out-coached in New England. They were out-coached last night for a while by Brian Flores. And so now they know they've got 11 days to work on Tampa Bay. They'll watch the game this weekend, and we'll see. Are they going to be the same team they were a year ago? Probably not, because teams will now figure out how to work against just the Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts improvises, and he can still make big plays. He can still take a game over and get that big first down. And when Al Michaels last night, who I love and know personally, when the Eagles got the ball with 25 seconds left in the half, and he thought they were just going to run out the clock. And then when he ran up the middle and then called the final timeout, Al thought, what's he doing? He was trying to set up at least a chance for a field goal. And then, boom, they kicked a 61-yarder. So I don't think Jalen Hurts is a panic guy. I think he made a couple of bad throws last night. That one to number 6.
Yeah, Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith, that one was a terrible forced throw into two guys. And that you'll see it. And you know this, Dan, from playing. You can see when a quarterback locks in on a guy from the jump and he doesn't move his head around and look around. And that's why, Kirk Cousins, for all of the criticism he takes, that guy is a baller. That guy can throw lasers, and he's got great weapons. He doesn't have a running game. To me, I think the biggest mistake that the Vikings made was giving up on their running game. When they let Dalvin Cook, who's a stud, and that's what's happening now. The whole league is like, well, the running back's not an important guy. We can throw anybody in there. But Dalvin Cook was a beast for them, and that's why last year they were able to run the football with Dalvin Cook and keep things mixed up. And now with the bad offensive line, guys hurt, and there's no ability to run the ball, they had to throw, and luckily they have great weapons. But
isn't that crazy, Tony? Isn't that crazy? Last night, the running back position dictated the entire game for both teams. Them not having Dalvin Cook and the Eagles having DeAndre Swift was complete. It was the position where they're trying to devalue was why the Eagles won that game. Exactly.
And they let, Miles Sanders go, who was a great player for them. And they figured, we can bring somebody else in here. And they had Boston Scott. He got hurt, and had the other guy who ran last week. He got hurt. And so what happens? The fact that Swift did not carry once in game one was a big shocker. But the good news is they had, and they have Rashad Penny, who gets hurt all the time. But so they do have guys that they can slip into the spot. And I think we're seeing that in the running back position, Dan, everywhere. You have your one stud guy, but you better have a second guy. You better have a change of pace guy. And that's what we're seeing now. It used to be you have the fullback and then the tailback. Very few teams use a fullback anymore with the flex position stuff. But the bottom line is the Eagles have always seemed to have a couple of guys that they can stick in there at running back. And when they keep the ball moving, and those offensive linemen love run blocking more than they do pass blocking. Everybody knows that. And so when you saw that team coming together and finally starting to make some moves, and then when you saw the ability of them to now make some throws, because now they're all of a sudden they're worrying about the running play all the time. And then Jalen Hurts made a couple of nice passes late in the game, and the running game was really what capped it for them. And then they go down to the onside kick. I mean, it was an interesting game. It was an ugly game. But the bottom line is, at this stage, when you're the Vikings who won, who were able to keep every game close and find ways to win, now they're 0-2 because they can't run the football, and their offensive line can't block to run the football. So
here's
every team has weaknesses. The Eagles have weaknesses right now, but I think their core is still strong, and I think their defensive line, as a defensive lineman, they just keep reloading. And Cox and Brandon Graham are old guys, but they still go in when you ask them to, and they still play hard, man. Those guys are still making plays at this stage of their careers. 14 years into the league, they're still key members of that defense.
Finally, Tony, did you make anything out of the bitching argument on the sidelines with AJ Brown? And let me tell you before you answer this, in Jalen, I said this yesterday. I said, you watch, if that dude doesn't start to get targets, he's going to start complaining. The reason I said that, Tone, is because I think that's the position today and the mouths of the position. Because, hey, back in the day, Tone, when you and me were covering the NFL, man, if you opened your face like the way some of these wideouts do, you'd get your head knocked off coming across the middle on a seam route. Now you could be a big mouth. And do you think it's more about just the position and the diva guy in the position?
I think so. And I think, and again, I don't know Antonio Brown. I know AJ Brown personally, but I mean, he doesn't seem like that kind of guy. Dallas Goedert, you didn't see him on the sideline complaining. So what, he got a lot of throws last week in New England, even though the Eagles really didn't throw the ball to have a lot of success throwing it. And so that's what receivers who are studs are always going to be that way. But I think deep down inside, I don't think those guys, Jalen Hurts said after the game, he's my best friend. That stuff happens. And you know what? They forget about it. That's not something that's going to linger. That's not now when they go out and start practicing again, the media is going to see that A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts have to be on the same page. It's not going to help the team. He hasn't really been a guy that's been considered one of those diva receivers. I mean, we can see the diva receivers, but he hasn't been one of those guys. So as much as they showed it last night, and I was like, wow, that's pretty. But then he tried to force the ball to him the next time he got it. So that's my concern, is when guys start chirping and then the quarterback feels an obligation that he's got to go out. And that could have hurt them because they didn't score a touchdown on two potential touchdowns, one that was called back and one, they just overthrew him. To me, if you score there, then the game's over. But if you don't, and you're just trying to placate a guy who wanted the ball more, that could have really hurt them. Thankfully, it didn't for their sake. But I think that kind of stuff, it's going to keep happening no matter where you are, especially if you have elite receivers. And I still think Jalen Hurts is an elite quarterback. I look around the league and I see, the Jets, how many mistakes they've made with first-round picks. It's really hard to get that guy. And remember, Jalen Hurts was a second-round pick. And you look at the Alabama guys now in this league, when we never thought, other than Kenny Stabler and Joe Namath back in the day, when nobody thought about Alabama quarterbacks because they were all running wishbones in college offenses. Now all these kids are running pro set offenses in college. And that's why you look at Tua and you look at Jalen Hurts and even Mac Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys all played in really good systems where they're throwing the football. You always had good running backs, but now you have to throw the football to be considered a good guy. And I think you're seeing a fresh crop of young quarterbacks come into this league ready to play. And Jalen Hurts, he belongs. I mean, he's not one of these guys that's going to get benched if he loses a game and has a bad game. I mean, he's got the keys to this thing, and they made the decision. They benched Carson Wentz. He's gone. They give him the keys, And the guy took them to a Super Bowl last year, in a year where really nobody thought that they would go to the Super Bowl. It's like the Phillies going to the World Series. Nobody thought either one of those teams, even though they had talent, nobody thought that they would go to the big game again after going and winning in 2017 and having a lot of changes since then.
Well, I'll tell you, Tone, you brought flashbacks back there with my wife taking my 6-foot ruler away from me, and it was great.
Foot down, Dan. You got, as we get older, you got to put your foot down and say, I'm a man. It's my house. You come into my house. As the great University of remember that game, FIU? Who was the broadcaster? What nuts when there was that?
Lamar Thomas.
Lamar Thomas in the broadcast booth. And
coming in our house.
You come into our house, you should get your behind whooped. That's the kind of passion and energy I want to see from the broadcast team. But he's still not doing the games, right? He's not.
No. Now he's a wide receiver coach at Kentucky.
Oh, that's great knowledge right there. That's great Kentucky Wildcat knowledge.
Hey, listen, I'm gonna connect with Miss Robin to get you those tickets.
Absolutely.
All right, so you guys can go for the Monday night game.
I'll be out. I can go out on the pirate ship. I'll go out there with the folks, man. I don't need to be in the box.
You're a man to the people.
Exactly. I want to be down there with the folks, man. And that's what it's all about. It's about kissing babies, slapping backs, pressing the flesh.
That's right. Hey, Tone, tell people where they could get your fabulous show.
Now, of course, on Friday nights, we go on at 7 o'clock. It's on No Filter Network at No Filter Net. You have to sign up, but you don't have to pay. There's no charge. But you have to get in, and they'll be on an app soon. But it's on at nofilter.net, and then you just go in there. You give them your information, no credit cards, no social security numbers. You go in there. We have a live stream going on like you do. Most shows now live stream, chat going on, and the ability for the audience to go into the knocker room, and then you could come on the show as well. So this digital world, as we've moved on, there's over-the-air radio is never going away, but the digital world is now taking over, and people can now see their favorite shows and hear their favorite shows because of the digital technology and the world we live in. And those of us who have embraced digital and have said, no, I want to see work on regular radio, you can still do that. But we're seeing most of the big names are now, and even people who have done it before, they know that this is the medium where people will have access to anything they want, 24/7 on replay.
Hey, Tom, I think one of the reasons, and I had this conversation the other night with Angelo, guys like you and Angelo, the reason that you're not on mainstream radio anymore, Angelo went like this. It's not because I'm old. It's because I can't do my show anymore.
Yeah.
And he said that. And I thought about you, and I'm like, you're one of the most loving guys on the planet. You're one of the most engaging people of all time, one of the great radio guys of all time. And I'm like, these guys, it's the same thing with me, man. You know what we used to do and the stuff, and people had like sense of humors, and and everything wasn't taken so serious. Those days are shot. Now you're a cheerleader if you're on the radio. And that's why I think this new platform here has those old side guards and those old railings for us, Tone, because that's kind of what we were reared on, was that we had a certain sandbox we were in. These guys today have a smaller sandbox.
Yeah. No, you can't. You can't do this. Now, guys have been around a while. Everybody knows what we do. So I haven't changed my approach in 50 plus years in radio. You haven't changed your approach.
Nope.
And then people say, what happened to you? I said, nothing happened to me. I'm doing the same thing I've always done. I talk about sports and I have fun. And now, unfortunately, you go to work for a big company and they hire you to talk about sports because they like what you did. And then when they hire you, they try to change you and turn you into something that you're not. And so that's why, again, I'm not down on
I get it.
Air radio. I just say, now that I can control my own destiny, you can be crazy. You're not threatening anybody. You're just doing and having a good time. That's what people want. That's what sports is about, and it should always be about, first and foremost.
Absolutely, Tony. People will check you out on Friday night. It is always a privilege to get you on. It was like Paisan Row this week, man. The legends of Philly all came on with us this week, and I can't thank you enough for always finding time. I'm happy you're healthy. I'll send Miss Robin a text when the show is over with. Thank you so much, my friend.
All right, my brother. Sorry that we weren't able to connect the last couple of months, but it's been a crazy summer, man. Now it's football. Now we're going nonstop football till next February, brother.
Look at Tony throwing them pipes up. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
You got it. That's my friend Tony Bruno there, man. Make sure you catch him out on his show on Friday nights. Hey, folks, don't forget, 40th anniversary of Hooters. We're very proud to have them. You know, Tony was just talking about, like, the Tampa area. That's where it was first founded, you know, right there in Clearwater. And now we have 7 locations in the Northeast area. All you have to do is go to northeasthooters.com to find that location nearest you for you to be able to have a great time this football season. And it's the official home of the National Football Show with Big Sills. Also, if you don't want to go into any one of the locations, go to HootersToGo.com. Order the grub. Bring it to your home, man. But if not, do me a favor. You got to try it out. Take your boys in there, man. Have yourself a great time. Try Tuesdays. Buy 10 wings. Get 10 boneless free. Wing Wednesdays, a 40-year tradition, 1983. All you can eat. Kids eat free on Saturdays. 6 items, $6. All the great drafts. I'm telling you, man, you just you have to go in and experience it. I've known these folks for over 40 years. Go to northeasthooters.com. That's northeasthooters.com to find one of the 7 locations nearest you. And when you roll in, do me a favor, tell them Big Sills sent you.